There are 3 top-load washers sitting in thrift stores right now that repairmen are quietly buying for their own families. These aren't desperate budget buys. These aren't good enough compromises. I'm talking about washers that run 20-30 years on a belt and a hose, selling for almost nothing because nobody wants anything that isn't a touchscreen anymore. After years fixing appliances, I've watched people drop serious money on smart washers with control boards that die in 3 years, while these 3 just keep spinning. Today I'm counting down the 3 most Repairman approved cheap washers, going deepest on number 1. A guy walked into my shop 3 months ago holding his phone, scrolling through a $420 repair quote from another shop. His washer was 2.5 years old. 2.5? It had a touchscreen, a moisture sensor, and a control board that had just fried itself for the second time, and the technician at the other shop told him it might just happen again in another year. He asked me if it was worth fixing again. I told him no, and then I told him what I'd buy instead, because I just put one in my own laundry room 6 months earlier, a Kenmore 80 series, built sometime in the late 90s to mid 2000s, picked up off a local listing for $60, sight unseen except for 2 blurry photos. He looked at me like I'd suggested he wash his clothes in a creek. "That's an old washer," he said, like it was a strike against it instead of the whole point. I told him that was exactly the point. Old, in this case, meant proven, and proven was worth more to me than a touchscreen I'd never use anyway. Here's what nobody tells you about the 80 series. Sears didn't build these themselves. Whirlpool built the guts, and Whirlpool's direct drive mechanism from that era is some of the simplest, toughest engineering ever bolted into a laundry room. There's no belt to snap. There's no electronic control board to fry. There's a mechanical timer with physical detents you can feel click under your fingers, a transmission built like a tank, and a motor that bolts straight to the tub with almost nothing in between to fail. It doesn't have a circuit board reading water temperature. It doesn't have a sensor guessing at load size. It doesn't have a lid lock that strands your clothes mid-cycle. It just washes. And because Whirlpool used this same basic platform across decades of badge-engineered machines sold under several different store names, parts are everywhere. Junkyards, online listings, even the shelf at the hardware store down the street. That customer bought his own 80 series 11 days later for $90 off a moving sale, loading it into his truck himself because the seller wanted it gone before the weekend. He texted me last month. "Still running? Haven't touched it?" That's 4 months in, 0 repairs, after going through 2 repair bills in under 3 years on the smart machine he finally hauled to the curb. Let's talk real numbers because this is where it gets almost insulting. A new, smart top loader with a touchscreen and sensors runs you $800 to $1,100, and based on what rolls through my shop, you're looking at your first control board failure somewhere between year 2 and year 4. That's a $300 to $500 repair, sometimes more if the wiring harness goes with it, and sometimes the part isn't even stocked, and you're waiting 2 weeks with a pile of dirty laundry. A clean Kenmore 80 series, by comparison, sells for $50 to $150 used, and the most common repair I do on one is a $12 agitator dog kit that takes me 15 minutes. Over 10 years, the math isn't close, and it isn't even a fair fight. If you're hunting for one, here's my inspection checklist. First, turn the timer knob by hand through a full cycle, slowly, and feel for resistance. It should click firmly through each step with no grinding or freewheeling. A mushy, slipping timer means it's near the end, though replacements are cheap and easy to find on the second-hand market. Second, run it empty and listen to the transmission for a full minute. A healthy 80 series hums low and steady, almost boring. Grinding, clunking, or high-pitched whine means the transmission bearings are going, and that's the one repair on this machine that isn't cheap. Budget close to what you paid for the whole washer. Third, check the agitator base for play by wiggling it firmly side to side. Too much movement usually means the agitator dogs are stripped. An easy, inexpensive fix, but worth knowing about and negotiating into the price before you buy. Fourth, look underneath at the motor coupler if you can access it, and check for cracking around the rubber insert. These rarely fail, but a previous bad repair job or a cracked coupler is your only real red flag on this entire machine. Bottom line on the Kenmore 80 series, you're getting a machine engineered before anyone thought smart meant fragile, built by a company that knew how to make a motor that outlives the house it's installed in for less money than most people spend on a single repair bill. The only reason it's cheap is because it says Kenmore on the front, the styling looks dated, and people assume old automatically means worn out. But if you think the 80 series is overlooked, the next washer on this list might be the single toughest machine I've ever pulled apart in this shop, and almost nobody is fighting over it on the used market, which frankly works out great for the rest of us. I had a woman bring in her Whirlpool Direct Drive last spring, not for a repair, just for a routine check before she sold her house, and didn't want to take the washer with her if it wasn't worth the trouble. The machine was 26 years old. 26. She'd run it through 3 kids, 2 moves she didn't take it on, a flooded basement that soaked everything around it but somehow left the washer untouched, and more loads of laundry than she could even begin to guess at. I put it through a full diagnostic cycle expecting to find something wrong, because at that age, something is usually wrong. I didn't find a thing. The motor coupler was original. The transmission was original. The only part she'd ever replaced, in 26 years of daily use, was a water inlet valve, and that was 8 years before she ever walked into my shop. She asked me what it was worth. I told her the honest answer. Almost nothing on paper, and almost everything in practice. She ended up giving it to her daughter instead of selling it with the house, and as far as I know, it's still running today. Here's the engineering behind why that 26-year-old machine didn't even blink. The Whirlpool Direct Drive platform, the one that ran under more store brands than I can count on one hand, did away with the belt entirely somewhere back in the early 80s and never looked back. The motor sits directly beneath the tub and drives it straight through a simple rubber coupler. No belt to stretch, glaze, or snap. No pulley alignment to drift out of true over the years. No tensioner to seize up and squeal at 3 in the morning. The transmission is a cast, heavy-duty unit built to take decades of abuse without complaint. And the motor itself is an induction motor with almost nothing inside it that wears out under normal use. It doesn't have a belt that needs replacing every few years. It doesn't have a control board interpreting load size through a guess. It doesn't have a single sensor anywhere near the wash basket. It just spins, drains, and spins again, exactly the way it did the day it left the factory, decade after decade, owner after owner. Pricing on these is almost comical. A clean Whirlpool Direct Drive in working condition typically sells for $40 to $125 on the used market, sometimes even less if the seller just wants it out of the garage. And most of what I see come through my shop needs nothing more than a coupler replacement, which runs about $15 in parts and takes me under half an hour. Compare that to the $800 to $1,100 range for a new smart machine, plus the control board failure most of them suffer within the first few years, plus a service call just to diagnose it, and you start to understand why every repairman I know has one of these tucked in his own basement instead of whatever's on the showroom floor. If you're shopping for one, here's my inspection checklist. First, run the machine through a spin cycle and listen closely for a high-pitched squeal building as it ramps up to speed. That's almost always the motor coupler starting to wear, and it's the single most common failure point on the entire platform. Cheap, fast, and worth checking before you hand over any cash, since it's also your best leverage for negotiating the price down a little. Second, check underneath for rust on the transmission housing and around the base where water tends to splash during normal use. Surface rust is cosmetic and not a concern. Flaking, deep rust eating into metal is a sign the machine sat somewhere damp for years and may have other issues worth negotiating over or walking away from entirely. Third, Run a full cycle and watch the agitator stroke closely from the side. It should move with a confident, snapping motion, almost aggressive. A sluggish or uneven stroke can mean worn agitator cam parts, which are inexpensive but worth factoring into your offer. Fourth, look closely at the porcelain tub finish for chips near the bottom edge. Surface chips are cosmetic. Anything deep enough to expose bare metal can eventually rust through, so weigh that against the asking price before you commit. Who should buy this washer? Anyone who wants the single lowest maintenance machine on this entire list. Full stop. No asterisks. Anyone who's tired of replacing belts every few years on cheaper machines. Anyone who wants a washer they can realistically run for 20 plus years without ever facing a major repair bill. Who should skip it? If you need a low-profile, ultra-quiet wash cycle for a thin-walled apartment, these run noticeably louder than modern machines, and that's just the trade-off for all that mechanical simplicity. If you absolutely need extra-large capacity for oversized comforters and bulky loads, look at a newer machine instead. These tubs run on the smaller side by today's standards, built for an era of smaller households and smaller laundry piles. If straight talk like this is useful to you, hit subscribe now, because the next washer on this list is the one I'd grab first if my own machine died tomorrow and I haven't even gotten to the best part yet. Which brings me to the one I've been saving, the one I'd grab first without a second thought. Years ago, a customer brought me a Maytag Dependable Care that her grandmother had bought new back when buying a washer was a once-in-a-generation purchase, rather than something you replaced every few years. She wasn't there for a repair. She wanted to know if it was finally time to let it go, because her grandmother had passed away that winter and she felt strange keeping such an old appliance running in her own house, like it didn't quite belong in a home with a smart refrigerator and a robot vacuum. I asked how old it was. 41 years? 41 years of laundry through at least 3 different houses across 2 states, and the only thing she could remember ever being replaced was a drain hose, and that was because a mouse had chewed through the original one in a garage one particularly cold winter. I put it on a level floor, ran a full cycle, and just watched it work for a while, the way you'd watch an old clock that somehow still kept perfect time. The transmission engaged with that same heavy mechanical thunk these machines have always had. No hesitation, no hint of slipping, no grinding underneath. The motor never strained, even on a full load of wet towels, the heaviest test I had on hand that day. I told her plainly, no hesitation in my voice. This machine will likely outlive the house it's sitting in, and probably the next one after that. Here's why the Dependable Care line earned its name, and earned it honestly. Maytag built these around one of the simplest, most overbuilt transmissions ever put into a consumer washer, a design the company barely changed for decades because it didn't need changing, generation after generation of the same proven internals. The agitator runs off a heavy cast assembly, not lightweight plastic gearing, and the motor is a basic brush-style unit engineered to be rebuilt rather than replaced when it finally does wear down, which on most of these takes longer than the lifespan of 3 modern smart washers stacked end to end, control boards and all. Let's talk numbers on the Dependable Care, because this is the gap that should make you angry if you bought new anywhere else. A clean, working Maytag Dependable Care typically sells for $75 to $200 used, depending on age and condition, and the parts that do eventually wear out. A water inlet valve, a lid switch, a drain pump run $15 to $40 a piece, with most repairs taking me under an hour from start to finish, including the drive to grab the part. A new smart top loader with the same basic capacity runs $800 to $1,200, and based on what comes through my shop, you're rolling the dice on a control board failure inside the first 3 to 5 years, a repair that often costs more than the entire Maytag did to buy outright, sometimes more than 2 or 3 of them combined. Stack that over 15 or 20 years of ownership, factor in the inevitable service calls and the parts shortages that come on top of that, And the Dependable Care isn't just cheaper to own, it's not even close, and frankly, it never was. If you're hunting for one, here's my full inspection checklist, the same one I run through every time a customer asks me to look one over before they buy. First, run a full cycle and listen closely to the transmission as it engages between agitation and spin. You want that solid mechanical thunk, immediate and confident, not a hesitant grind or a delayed clunk that makes you wince. A clean, immediate engagement means the internals are healthy and have years left in them. Second, check the lid switch by lifting the lid mid-cycle and watching how fast the agitator stops. The machine should pause almost instantly. A machine that keeps agitating with the lid wide open has a failed switch. Cheap and easy to replace, but worth knowing before you buy, and worth negotiating a few dollars off the asking price. Third, inspect the porcelain tub and cabinet carefully for rust, especially around the bottom seam and beneath the bleach dispenser where water tends to collect over the years. Light surface rust is purely cosmetic. Rust through at the seam means water has been sitting somewhere it shouldn't for a long time, and that's a harder problem to walk back from once it's gone that far. Fourth, run the water level selector through its full range, slowly, one notch at a time, and listen for the valve clicking on and shutting off cleanly at each setting. A valve that sticks or keeps dripping after the cycle ends is an easy, inexpensive fix, but it usually tells you the machine hasn't had any basic maintenance in quite a while, which is worth keeping in mind. Who should buy this washer? Anyone who wants the single most repair-friendly machine on this entire list, with parts that are still cheap and still everywhere, decades after these stop being made new at any store. Anyone who wants to set up a washer once and genuinely not think about it again for 20 years or more. Anyone who's tired of watching control boards fail right when the warranty runs out, on schedule, almost like clockwork, every single time, year after year. Who should skip it? If you want a high-efficiency cycle that uses noticeably less water per load and helps with a tighter utility bill, these predate that entirely, and you'll feel it on your water bill every single month compared to anything modern off the showroom floor. If you need a quiet machine for an open concept house where the laundry room sits right next to the living room, these are mechanically loud by design. That same thunk you want to hear as proof of reliability is the exact thunk you'll hear from the couch during the next episode you're trying to watch. Here's my final take on the Maytag Dependable Care. This is the washer I would buy for myself today, without hesitating for even a second if mine ever finally gave out after all these years. Decades-old engineering, parts you can still find on a Saturday afternoon without driving across town, and a transmission built by people who genuinely assumed you'd want the same washer for the rest of your life, maybe longer. Priced like nobody wants it, simply because most people don't know what it actually is anymore, or what it's actually capable of. So there it is, 3 washers the market forgot about entirely, but Repairmen never did, not once. The Kenmore 80 series, with its dead, simple mechanical timer, and a transmission that just refuses to quit, no matter how long you ignore it. The Whirlpool Direct Drive, the quiet workhorse that outlasts the houses it sits in, sometimes by decades, without anyone ever noticing how good it really is. And the Maytag Dependable Care, the best kept secret on the entire used appliance market, and the one I would grab first myself. No contest, no hesitation. You now know 3 top-load washers you can find for under $200 total that will outlast anything sitting on a showroom floor with a touchscreen bolted to the front of it. Next time you're standing in front of a salesman pushing the latest smart machine with sensors and a lid lock, you'll know exactly what questions to ask, and exactly what you're not being told about what's actually hiding inside that cabinet. Now, if you want to know which appliances Repairmen genuinely respect across the board, not just washers but the dryers, the refrigerators, and the dishwashers that just won't quit either, no matter how old they get, I did a whole video covering exactly that. It's right here. the machines that just refuse to die, with the real numbers from my own shop to back every claim up. Like the video if it helped you out today genuinely. Subscribe for more straight talk on what's actually worth buying and what's just expensive junk waiting to fail right on schedule. I'll keep telling you the truth, the showroom floor never will, one repair bill at a time. Take care of your appliances. Treat them right the way these old machines were built to be treated, and they'll outlast every excuse anyone ever gives you for replacing them early. Take it or leave it. I'll see you in the next one.